it was helping to rebuild the enamel of astronauts who went into space for like long periods of time and didn't have a toothpaste. And so it was started by NASA, so I thought it was relevant for you. But basically, with that brand, we're finding quickly like people don't know what 10% anohydroxyapatite is, and we're like, who would know about this? And we're like, well, dental students. So I posted a job on LinkedIn and said, looking for dental students who create content. And now I've been getting a bunch of people who are like, I'm in dental school, I want to make side income. And so part of that is like, I'm paying $10 a video, but we said like, what is the thing we want to incentivize them to do? I'm like, I want them to create engaging content. So originally we were saying, let's incentivize views. And then we were like, well, we should incentivize likes. And we're like, no, we should really incentivize shares.
Welcome back to Founders Forum. Today, we've got a very, very special guest. We've got the marketing master, the e-commerce extraordinaire, and someone who's helped us a lot on our journey, Mr. Joe Chavez.
Let's go.
Joe, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'll open it the way I open up every call is, hey, team.
Yes.
That's how we're actually running joke now too.
I know. It's
We,
like every time we have a call, we'd start it that way.
Hey, team.
Hey, team.
Yeah, just for the audience to know, Joe's super cool because we met him at WealthCon. It was a conference, like a real estate conference, I guess.
Yeah.
And we were wearing these really, really big buttons. And Joe, of course, being the great entrepreneur that he is, approached us and kind of just introduced himself and told us what he did. And he was really, really nice enough to kind of mentor us for a few months. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you. That was hugely helpful. That changed our lives. Something I never really got clarity on now that I know you a little bit more is like, why were you at WealthCon?
Yeah,
yeah. I want to chat about that actually. I was going to say like what am I doing at a real estate conference, by the way? And that was the first time like I never go to events like that. And did you all go to events like that, or was that like new for you?
New-ish. We like twice a year we'll try to go to a conference to see if we can get business, but that never really works out. Instead, we got a mentor. So
true.
Yeah, it worked out. It worked out. Cool. Let me switch this to I have another mic another camera right here. We're gonna switch it over. I forgot I didn't have the good cam. There we go. So yeah, what I was doing at what I was doing at a real estate conference is my buddy works with Ryan Pineda. So it was Ryan Pineda's WealthCon. Okay. And my buddy he's like, I guess he's technically like one of the coaches. And he had told me, because my son was a huge fan of what's his name? Why am I blanking on it right now? Tim Grover. Tim Grover. Yeah. And so he's a huge fan because he loves baseball and loves sports and stuff. And so he was like, he had read his book, Relentless. And I read it too. And so we had it laying around the house. My son is reading it, falls in love with like, oh yeah, I love this mindset. It's so awesome. And when I heard he was going to be there, my buddy Ivan Tejeda was over the house, and he was like, yeah, he's going to be there. You guys should come and I'll get you tickets. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we got tickets, flew out, and yeah, I just happened to be there, and like I felt super out of place because that whole group is just like, yeah, flipping deals, you know, houses, all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, this stuff's cool, but like I think Taylor was probably the only one that I was like, yeah, this is kind of in my world. But then I saw you all with the Google Ads pin, and I was like, oh, some people, and then it said something about e-commerce, and I was like, I like e-commerce, and so then ended up reaching out to you.
I don't know if you care about this or not, but the other camera is more in sync with your audio. It's up to you, but this camera is not in sync. So
yeah, that's fine. Let's go to the other one. Let's go there. Cool. But yeah, that's how I ended up finding. That's how I ended up there at the conference. Was that
nice?
So one of the arcs of our episode is basically the entrepreneurial journey, right? Yeah. And we'd love to hear kind of like the Cliff's notes of kind of where you started and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah.
And I like to kick this off by asking, do you remember what your very, very, very first job was?
Yeah, I do. And I was talking to somebody earlier about something similar around like, I didn't really think about it until literally today. When I was a kid, I used to like, it's November right now. We're about to go into holiday season. And I was telling somebody, like, I used to hang Christmas lights as a kid. And I used to like ride my rollerblades. I grew up playing hockey and stuff. And I was like, I used to ride my rollerblades in this place where, if you've ever seen like OC Housewives, it's called Coto de Casa. It's like this fancy neighborhood in Orange County.
Yeah.
We used to go to all these massive houses over there, and my uncle would install Christmas lights, and I would go and I would skate. I came up with the idea. I was like, why don't I rollerblade and I'll pass out the flyers to all the houses.
There you go.
And I thought about it today. I was like, I think that was the first time I realized like you can have an idea, you can see a gap in a marketplace and be like, I'm gonna fill that gap and like get paid for the value I add in exchange for that. But there is no guarantee in that. And I think since that time, that was like probably like 9 or 10 when I was doing that.
9 or 10.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I was young. Like I remember doing that and then thinking like, wow, this is like, I guess I didn't think anything of it at the time. Just like, oh, this is cool. I get to hang out with everyone and like just be. And then as time went, like as I look back, I'm like, that was like really formative and kind of what I'm doing now, even with some of the TikTok shop stuff where I'm like, it feels like it's like you're in the dark and there's nothing to hold on to, but you're like, as long as I just keep going and keep trying and document what I'm doing and learning, like you will figure out a way.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I can imagine small Joe.
Yeah, skating around.
Fast, like
bombing hills on rollerblades.
Well, was Joe 6 foot at 9 years old?
Yeah, pretty much. I was 5'9". Yeah, I used to love it though. I used to take my skateboard too. We like bomb these hills and
nice.
Super fun up there. So I'd say that was like doing stuff young, and then first actual job I'd say was like laying carpet. I used to lay carpet all through high school, and
whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah. Pull up carpet pad, and I used to go into these. My buddy's dad did it, and so you basically go in these offices Friday at like 5 or 6 p.m. and then you're laying carpet till like Monday morning because you're doing it all weekend until you're pulling it up, ripping it out, carrying it out, and then laying down the new stuff. I would never lay it. I was more of like the grunt work guy that has to pull it all, take it down the elevator, move all the cabinets, and
what motivated working in high school? Like, did you need the money? Was it just like side cash?
I don't know. I guess I was just like, oh, you can work. I can work, and I'm gonna get paid like $20 an hour versus working like at Subway. At Subway, yeah, and it's like it was really hard work. It was really short and like a lot at one time, but I'd say that was like my first job, like unofficial, and then I went into working at Subway. It was like my first like official job, and
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I love hearing that you've got like all these different places, like, because I think about like, you hear about those movie stars like Harrison Ford. He was like a carpenter or whatever. He like moved refrigerators, and now he's like Han Solo. So it's like it's interesting to see the evolution of where people come from and where they learn like kind of the tricks of the trade, let's say, and where you're at now. So I'm curious, like, was there ever in your thinking at that time, like, oh, I want to have, my own thing, or I want to go into marketing, or, this is what's interesting to me, or like, where did that like idea spark from?
Yeah. I used to imagine like, I grew up in like, I guess not a great place. It was Anaheim, California, in Orange County area. Like Anaheim is like this place called Beach Boulevard. And there's a bunch of like homeless people, bunch of bad people that live like in that area. Yeah. I think HBO's even done a special on it before, like, to be honest. And it's just a bad area. And I remember growing up there, and I would always like visualize. I didn't really know it was visualizing them, but I would like imagine like one day gonna have a house with a beautiful family with a like 2-car garage and like gym in it and all these things. And didn't know how I do it, but I was like, I just want to have something where I'm like, I would work hard and then have this thing that we almost like control our own destiny, whether it's like a skill that we have. Or whatever it be. And then when I was going through high school, I started to see it come into like reality, where like there was one moment where we had our senior year. I don't know if you had this, but there's like these t-shirts that everybody wore to the senior event. There was like different events, and there was like a senior night, right? And then they gave you these t-shirts. And so I had the idea, I was like, why don't I bring together, why don't we make our own shirt? That said, we went to Cypress High, so it was like the shirt said A to Z, we survived CYP, and basically it was like everybody included, like we survived. And quick side note, I actually realized I had a business in high school. I would do recycling. Like I took the Xerox boxes where there's like paper came in them. Every class had them, and I would basically I used to do graffiti as a kid, so I would write on them, and I would like almost, I forgot what I'd write on it, but I'd say like, try to make it or something like that on the box.
Yeah.
And I'd put them in all these classrooms, and I'd ask the teachers, can I leave these boxes in these classrooms? And say, yeah. And I said, I'm going to come at the end of the week and pick them up. And so I had some girls in my class that I like kind of recruited in my psych class who I started the day with. I'm like, can you go? And at the end of the day, like I'll basically pay you at the end of the week. And so they would go and pick up all the boxes. And so they were kind of, I guess, working for me in high school. And then I did this t-shirt idea where I was like, hey, let's do a t-shirt. And I didn't know how to use any design programs or anything. So got some, like, I think it was Coral Draw Plus was the app. And made the shirt, put it on a little paper, like a little 4x5 paper, and then just had the same group of girls go and pass them out to all the classrooms. And then they would fill them out. They want what size they were and what stuff they wanted. And then we put it on a spreadsheet, and I went and got my own t-shirts printed and sold them for like, I think it was like 25 or $30 a shirt. And basically had a line of every senior in the school. I went and got the shirts printed, figured out I didn't know how to do it, but I ended up going and like just calling in the yellow pages or whatever, like different places, ended up driving out to get the shirts printed. I had a massive like boxes of them, brought them to school, and had 2 lines, guys and girls, and a whole, we're passing them out to everybody. And the principal came up to me and was like, well, what do you think you're doing? I'm like, oh, I'm selling these shirts. And he was like, well, you can't do that. I was like, well, can you show me where it says that I can't do that? And basically they were like, well, we don't have anywhere that it says you can't, but like we were going to sell a shirt to everyone. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, everyone already bought their shirts, and they all like these shirts better than the ones. I think that's how it started, is I saw the options that were there, and I was like, these are so whack. Like, why would anybody want these? And I just made one. And now I think looking back, I think that's kind of what formed like the entrepreneurial side, and showed me like, hey, this is possible. And made probably $1,000 or something dollars, and everybody wore them. But the coolest thing I thought was like, after my cousin was still going to that school, and he's like, hey, now they require you to wear the shirt to get into the event.
Nice.
Wow.
Their shirt, basically. So the school shirt they require you. So I'm like,
take the business away.
I'm like, you can't do that anymore. But I was like, that I think was the moment where I was like, wow, you can have an idea, do something, and there's always that feeling of like everyone around, like even in the moment, the people around you may be having doubts, or there may be like this feeling of uncertainty, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means like you got to keep going. You got to have belief in yourself and the idea, and keep moving along. So
something I wanted to definitely bring up, not to toot my own horn, but one of the most organized people I know in my life is me, right? and I mean, I came from a background of like NASA engineering, right? So that's where I got all my skill set.
Yeah.
When you started to mentor us, I was like, what the how are you so organized? You're showing us like your systems, your spreadsheet. And it took me almost a decade at NASA to build up my organizational skills, So I'm curious about like, how did you I'm sure it didn't take like 1 year, but can you walk me through like how long that journey was and how you got as organized as you got it systematically?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I've never met anyone else that I could be like, this person's more organized than I am,
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Well, it's funny because I've always like, I'm more on the creative side, and I probably could have gone into like an engineering route, but I think with my background, like growing up kind of rough, getting into graffiti, then learning design and more on like the Photoshop and all the creative stuff. When I started to design, I was pretty organized already. Like I just found value in, like, if I'm doing, we would be doing like a whole layout of a whole campus, and I would be doing like the flag banners and the print cards and everything. And like, this needs to be 22 by 28. This needs to be 10 by 5. Like all of that, I would be the one to be like, let me just organize it all first. And then let me build out a template in Photoshop with all my layers named and everything. This is the template file. And then everyone takes from there. I think I always just saw like, what's the most efficient way? And I remembered even from a kid, like, what's the most efficient way to do something? And if I can build that tool first for everyone to use, and then after, everyone's going to be better. So then I can look back and like be creative and manage things and like be more of a visionary. I just love that. And I feel like you're able to be a great visionary when you are the one who built the system, and then go from there and are able to then like guide and steer it. So I think honestly, it's just over time, I just acquired it. I never intentionally like learned anything about it.
Yeah, that's interesting then, because like, yeah, I totally agree with Gregory too. Like we were like mind blown every single time you show us like, oh no, this is how I think about this. This is how I organize. I mean, like,
Funny.
what the heck? How? That's amazing.
Yeah, I think too, maybe because it's like yeah, I don't know. I think maybe just, you know, the nature and nurture side, like maybe it's just growing up, I like was like, oh yeah, you have to be organized or you'll be, you know, unprepared or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I'm curious then, because it sounded like you started more on a design kind of pathway. How did that transition over to the more marketing side? Like where would you attribute like most of your learning on like e-commerce or marketing now?
Yeah.
Like what was that process like? Who did you learn that from?
I think it's when I became a media buyer is where it really happened. There was a time when I thought I was going into a role that was where I was going to be like a director of, or I thought I was just signing up for a graphic designer role, and it ended up being a marketing role. And then when I learned like, oh, it's a marketing role, I was like, okay, well, what do marketing people do? And I was like, well, marketing really has to drive sales. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the best way to do that? And then that's when I started teaching myself Facebook ads. I remember what I've always been big on is I will find free stuff online. Like say I'm trying to learn TikTok shop. I'll look up like TikTokshop.pdf and like find in Google what are all of these courses that people have, or like how do I get a course for free or something. And then that stuff I'm like, all right, let me learn that, and I'll read that in the evening. And like by the next day I'm like, okay, I know now what, say for TikTok shop stuff, like I know the difference between Seller Central and Creator Central. Okay, now how do I do this thing? And I'll like ask that question and then answer it. And so for me, it was like just, I think out of necessity, I got more into learning media buying. And then from there, it led into, I remember there was like a distinct moment where I got a MacBook Air for like 3 years. I was about to get a new computer. I was like, I either get a really good design computer or I get a computer that's a MacBook Air and all I can do is be in spreadsheets and business. And I'm going to almost recreate my identity into that.
That's awesome.
I think that's the hardest part is you have to detach your identity from the thing that you are doing now in order to become something else. And so I've been good at reinventing myself in that way. And I'm even in the process of doing it now with TikTok shop stuff. Like I can say like, no, I'm a Facebook ads guy, or I can say like, no, I'm somebody who understands how to like get attention on whatever platform it is now. And so I will learn whatever skills it takes to do that and pull from things from the past. But like, I'll be the worst person now. And then in a month or two, I'll be like, okay, I'm much better. And I've learned a new skill.
I think something that really stood out in the beginning too was when you decided to coach us. And I noticed right away how quickly you took action. Like you set up, you know, a platform, a spreadsheet, and you know, it really showed me the importance of just taking action and like not thinking about it too much. Just kind of
like had I thought about basically when we started, it was like I was like, okay, what would 12 weeks of us chatting? Because like how it evolved was like you were asking questions and I was answering, we were texting, and then it was like, oh, what about this? Oh, here's this. And I'm like, what if I just kind of shared what I know and that could help you with where you are and where you could go, and put it in 13 weeks, say here's every week, and like that stuff I'll be thoughtful about and build. But I'm like, I just want to think about it once and then I'll just show up every week and kind of fill in the gaps.
So, that makes sense. Something I really wanted to get to. Have you read this book called Never Enough by Andrew Wilkinson?
Oh no, but it's absolutely on my list. I've watched all his stuff. I've been following him since when I was explaining like being a designer. I was following him since back in the days when they had not Tiny. It was what's the agency he ran before? Like it was his original agency when they were designing the stuff for Slack.
The web design, right?
Which one?
The web design one.
Yes,
right?
yes. I'm forgetting the name, but I was following him since then before he even was a millionaire. Like he was so early in the game, and like I would watch his videos and be like, oh dude, this is awesome. Like he was just designing websites back then.
Yeah. And, I bring it up because you know, I read a book a month, but I finished it last month in 11 days. I don't think I've ever finished, other than The Alchemist, I've never finished a book so quickly. But I bring it up because I'm glad you know the context. He basically talks a lot on the podcast now that he really just focuses on two things nowadays. It's one, hiring CEOs, right? So you find the right person at the top to then hire the rest of the company. And the other one, which I think we started to really learn from you and our other friends, Chris and Paulo, which is incentivization. So this is actually something that's, I think, slept on a little bit. Can you tell me a little more of like when you realize it's very important to figure out an incentive structure for your team, and like how do you go about creating that incentive structure?
That's so relevant because I'm actually doing that right now with TikTok Shop. I just got off the phone with Max on my team. Shout out Max if you're listening. But we were talking about this.
Thanks.
Basically, what I'm doing right now is like working with the toothpaste, working with a brand called Mouthology. We're developing what we believe is like the world's best toothpaste, and it has this ingredient called 10% nanohydroxyapatite, which like fills in the little holes in your teeth. So with that being said, and it's astronauts used to use this. Is that why you're smiling, Gregory?
No, it sounded like a tongue twister and you nailed it. So.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah, trust me, I've had to say that a bunch and learn so much about it. But it started in 1970. NASA helped drive like this technology forward because your teeth already are made of hydroxyapatite, and they said there were it was helping to rebuild the enamel of astronauts who went into space for like long periods of time and didn't have a toothpaste. And so it was started by NASA, so I thought it was relevant for you. But basically, with that brand, we're finding quickly like people don't know what 10% nanohydroxyapatite is, and we're like, who would know about this? And we're like, well, dental students. So I posted a job on LinkedIn and said, looking for dental students who create content. And now I've been getting a bunch of people who are like, I'm in dental school, I want to make side income. And so part of that is like, I'm paying $10 a video, but we said like, what is the thing we want to incentivize them to do? I'm like, I want them to create engaging content. So originally we were saying, let's incentivize views. And then we were like, well, we should incentivize likes. And we're like, no, we should really incentivize shares. Because if you create every piece of content you create, you should create it with the mindset of having it be shared. So us building a bonus plan on top of that. So every video that gets, say, 100 likes, you get a $50 bonus or $100 bonus. The content naturally is just going to get better. And I think we've been spending the most time on this because we're like, this is going to get people who make content that actually is good. And how good it, like most people, I think most people will create videos for $10 an hour, but it's like you're capped at that. And or $10 a video, but then it's like we said you can only make 3 videos a day. That's $210 a week is what they can make. But if the incentive structure is right, to your point, it's like people will be very, very inclined to do that. And so I think one thing I've always struggled with is my own view of the game of business, and then detaching it from, oh, this is like I just want to be a very fair person. And a lot of times I'm like, that feels like I'm taking advantage if they could be earning more, but I don't give it to them right away, and then I make them work for it. And so I think that's something as an owner, like I've had to learn is like, I have to connect the value to it. And I think understanding the P&L has helped me to do that, so that I truly am like, well, if they ever were to ask like, well, why don't you just pay me, $20 a video? It's like, well, because look, here's how the P&L works. And unless we drive more views, which drives more sales, like the OpEx gets too big.
Operating expense.
Operating expense. But does that answer your question around the incentivized structure and like kind of how I've think about that? And even with this opportunity for working as I'm technically the marketing director, but it's like it all plays into working with people and incentivizing them to do the right things in content.
A little bit. The reason I asked is because I think most people would think hourly rate, right? It's like, okay. But then there's like project based, but really ultimately I think you should be aligned with an incentive, because if you just pay them hourly, then there's really no alignment between the employee and the company, right?
Yeah.
You kind of want to incentivize them with a common goal, basically.
Yeah. And that's for this example, like one of the things we looked at, we're like, what if we just do $10 an hour for videos? And we're like, well, then they'll just do like one video an hour, or maybe not great videos. So I'm like, per video, that's one incentive. That's more shots on goal for us. And then we're like, and the bonus structure is we're starting with actually views, and then we'll go to likes, and then we'll eventually maybe look at shares or sales. But yeah.
Interesting.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I can't believe it's already been like 20 plus minutes. It's crazy. This is going by so fast. As you can tell, like there's a lot of value to be had here. I guess a more broad question as we, wrap things up. There are just like so many people on social media and so many businesses trying to get their footing on social media. What would be kind of like your 1 or 2 recommendations for a small business that's trying to build out this content, that's trying to like find their place within TikTok or Instagram? Like, is there an action that you would do from a content perspective or an ad perspective that could set them apart?
Yeah, I guess. And we can go like 10 more minutes here, but what would be most helpful? Is it like, do you want me to go TikTok shop route? Should I go Shopify and e-commerce route, or do like service business?
Let's do TikTok because we're not on TikTok. So we might as well learn something from you today.
Yeah. All right. Let's chat about it. So basically how TikTok shop works is like, let's take, basically it's like you have a storefront on TikTok shop. there's affiliates that are like you two could be affiliates, have your own page, and basically create content for brands that then you can put their products in your shop, and then you can talk about the headphone case brand and then share content. Or then basically say, and you can buy it from my the link below. That link gets attributed back to, hey, somebody clicked your link and they bought because you shared it with them. And so there will be a commission structure attached to that, maybe 5%, 10%. A lot of brands are doing like 20%. So let's say we were like a toothpaste or a not a toothpaste brand, but we'll say like a headphone brand selling headphones. I'd say step one is like understand who is the person you are talking to. You always hear that, but like if we're selling headphones, are we selling it to moms? Are we selling it to teens? Or who are we selling this to? Because that's going to dictate the way that you message it and the story that you tell. And you won't be able to recruit the right affiliates on TikTok Shop. You won't be able to create the right content that you think is going to resonate with the people you're trying to sell to. And I think that this is where most people get hung up, is they say everybody, and then they're essentially marketing to nobody, because it would be like us randomly talking on this podcast right now and just me saying like, you know what I had for lunch? A burger. And you're like, what is he talking about now? Like, I have no idea. And I'm like, hey, you know what I'm doing this weekend with my family, guys? And you're like, wait, this is not a family podcast. So I think people market like that though. Like they don't have any clear goal or direction. And then they just try a bunch of random angles. So I think it's like having a conviction and a focus is 90% more than what most brands, if they had no knowledge, would do. And so once you have your product and you said like, okay, what makes this unique? Then you say, okay, now who are we going to start going after as a result, and creating content for those people on TikTok Shop. And then from there, you're kind of creating content organically. You're then creating content, you're seeding product to affiliates. And so one thing I'd say that like, if you're listening to this and you're getting into TikTok Shop, is just get clear on your numbers. Understand how much does your product cost to ship a sample. That's ship the sample and the cost of goods. So if this product is $5 to make it and it's $3 to ship the sample, that's $8 to give one sample out. And understand understand that it's better to have one creator make multiple videos versus sending this to 10 creators and each of them making one video. So I'd rather send it to one creator and have them make 10 videos, because if each of those videos gets 1,000 views, that's 10,000 views for $10, versus it's if we send it to each of the different creators, we've now gotten 10,000 views, but we've now spent $10 time, you're like $100 for all of the content. And so that's where I think a lot of brands right now are going wrong in TikTok Shop, is they're just like, seed a bunch of stuff to a bunch of people, but they're not actually then following up and tracking like how many videos does each person we send to create. And if none of them are going viral, you just wasted a bunch of money sending a bunch of product to people who didn't perform. And so I think it's about being clear about who the product is for is the main thing though.
There you go, crash course on TikTok marketing. I'm going to sneak in one more question before Kayla wraps us up here. I hated reading growing up. And unfortunately, even through my college and professional career, I didn't really read a lot, which is unfortunate, because in the entrepreneurial world in the past years, I've been reading a lot. It's kind of a basic question, but I actually think it's very important for entrepreneurs. So thank you for recommending Profit First. I finished that book after you recommended it. It was humbling, because I know very little people better in finances than myself, but then that book definitely humbled me. So thank you for that. My question is, I know it's hard, but if you were to recommend only one book to an entrepreneur in year 2 of their business, what would it be?
Dang, I have Purple Cow right here, and I'm like, man, I should year 2. I think it depends on what phase you're in, but I think by year 2, it would probably be I have Who Not How here. Have you read that book?
Which one?
Who Not How?
Do Not How.
Who
No.
Not How.
Who Not How?
No, okay. We have not read that.
This is another great one. And all my books, like I love just like marking up stuff and like really just I try to read them a couple times and like keep them around just to kind of go through stuff. But Who Not How is really great. Basically it talks about it says here like who creates problems, how, or who creates results, how creates problems. So when you're like, how do I do this? And you go to try to figure it out. It's like that you're creating a problem versus like, who can help me do this? And even as like, I'm talking about this TikTok Shop stuff, like I'm bringing in people who have already built communities were like, let me connect with that guy, pay him whatever for an hour, and like siphon everything he knows to like leapfrog ahead.
Exactly.
I just learned TikTok SEO this week. Like this week I learned TikTok SEO, creating content on TikTok, and like man on the street stuff just from siphoning from other people. So I think for year 2, that will turn it into like, you'll basically leapfrog like 3 years by reading Who Not How, because it will kind of teach you a new way of thinking. And the best part is this whole book was written by this guy, Ben Hardy, but it says Dan Sullivan wrote it. But Dan Sullivan hired Ben Hardy to write the book, basically. And like that's the whole meta thing. Is like
that's hilarious.
Yeah. And so I think once you realize that concept, it's like you can then start doing what like ultimately I want to do is I'm going to do is like buy, grow, sell brands. Is I'm gonna, like Andrew Wilkinson, like you find good people to run the brand, you give them the vision, you get really clear about like, here's what I expect it to produce, and then they let them do their thing. And that it reframed the way I thought about the world. Is like, you're robbing somebody from an opportunity when you try to do it all yourself. And he talks about how this guy fell off a roof and almost died, and he had millions to be able to pay a contractor to do it, but he was still trying to do everything by himself. And I realize I am that person in many ways, because all of us start that way. And until you're able to let go of the vine and like think that way, you're always going to be stuck at where you are and wonder why.
That's awesome.
So year 2, I think that's a helpful,
not how.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. That's a great one. Well, thank you so much for coming on to our podcast today. I mean, I feel like we've gotten so much great pieces of wisdom, and like we said, our little nuggets.
That's right, the
nuggets. Lots of nuggets in this one.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, where can our listeners find you? What is the best place?
Yeah, I'd say LinkedIn is probably it. Look up Joe Chavez on LinkedIn with 3 Z's. So Joe Chavez, CHAVEZZZ. Just look up that name on LinkedIn and you'll find me, and send me a DM on there. I'm usually like, I feel like most active, or at least check it like once a month. And always happy to connect. Always happy to help if I can.
Nice. Very cool. Well, if you've been listening this far, thank you so much. Please let us know down in the comments below. If you have any questions for Joe, we will definitely make sure that it gets to him, so that you can get some of his nuggets and his brilliance. Don't forget, we do upload weekly, so don't forget to like,
subscribe,
that bell notification.
Yeah.